and welcome to the what, why, and how of forest certification in Ontario. This two-part video will give you an informative overview of what chain of custody or COC certification is, why it is of value and worth it to become certified, and how to go about becoming COC certified within Ontario. Before we take a closer look at chain of custody certification, let's talk about certification in general, and then briefly review forest management certification. Certification is a voluntary process that businesses undertake to assure consumers that the manufacturing process meets basic health and safety standards, as well as observing any social or environmental concerns that may apply. In order to become certified, businesses are thoroughly audited by an independent third party. Some examples of common certified products are organic produce, grain-fed meat, and fair trade coffee. The marketplace is hungry for businesses and suppliers that hold themselves accountable to reputable certification systems. While certification takes time, effort, and budget, it pays off in national and international consumer recognition. At the core of any certification program is a set of standards, which are defined by an accreditation body. They outline the basic requirements needed to maintain certification. There are three main groups involved in developing and maintaining the certification process. The first is the certification system, which, as well as defining standards, also develops the certification policies and procedures. It accredits the certifiers to ensure that the standards are being followed. An example of a certification system is the Forest Stewardship Council, or FSC, which we will talk about in an upcoming video. The certifier is accountable to the certification system and works with subject matter experts to develop audit protocol and to certify and audit participating organizations. An example of a certifier in the forest management industry is the Rainforest Alliance. Finally, a certified entity, like the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, is accountable to the certifier. Entities manage their forests according to the standards and principles established by the certification system, like the FSC. In this example, EOMF is accountable to the Rainforest Alliance, who audits the EOMF to ensure compliance. Forest certification was developed to help address international concerns about forestry practices and forestry conversion, especially in tropical regions. A useful tool for promoting world-class forestry, forest certification provides a mechanism for improving on and monitoring compliance with current policies. It also protects the industry from controversy and consumer boycotts. Canada is an active participant in forestry certification and boasts over 40% of the world's certified forest area. There are environmental, social, and economic benefits to forest certification. It serves as a guide to sustainable forestry and lends credibility and accountability to current practices. Workers get standardized training, including better safety training, and record keeping becomes more consistent. Certification gives manufacturers access to unique markets and may allow them to charge premium prices for a sustainable product. Forest certification and chain of custody certification are complementary processes. Together, they tell consumers that wood or wood products were harvested from a well-managed forest. To become certified, a forest manager hires an accredited independent third-party certification body to assess the forest according to established standards, which cover both high-level management requirements and on-the-ground forest operations. There are two types of standards that forests are measured against: system-based and performance-based. System-based standards are used to evaluate the systems in place to uphold existing legislation, policies, or procedures. Performance-based standards evaluate specific ecological and social criteria. These standards are often specifically developed to address the needs of individual regions. If the practices meet the standards, the forest becomes certified. Once certified, a forest is audited every year to make sure that it still meets the standards. The exact process varies depending on which of the 3 Ontario forest certification systems is administering the certification. In Canada, there are 3 main certification systems that define national standards and develop certification policies and procedures. They are the Canadian Standards Association, or CSA, the Forest Stewardship Council, FSC for short, and the Sustainable Forest Initiative, or SFI. All 3 have options for chain of custody certification and product labeling. The certification systems were developed after a call to action was raised in 1992 at the United Nations Earth Summit in Rio. Environmental groups, industry representatives, labor unions, and First Nations people demanded stricter regulations to prevent further degradation and loss of the world's forests. Each of the 3 certification systems has its own history, funding, supporters, and mandate, and they have all agreed to abide by a common set of principles. These principles include to observe national and international laws, guidelines, and forestry principles in all activities, to include a variety of stakeholder groups at every stage of standard development, to develop clear standards with well-defined principles and measurable performance criteria, to include site visits and forest management guidelines in their certification evaluation, to offer labeling and tracking systems for products that carry a certification claim. The Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification, or PEFC for short, is an international, non-profit, non-governmental organization that promotes sustainable forest management through independent third-party certification. It has evaluated and endorsed 32 national certification systems in 30 countries, including the CSA and SFI. The FSC is an alternative forest certification system, but shares forest management standards with PEFC in some countries. The 3 systems provide the Canadian forestry industry with a choice. Depending on the needs of their target market, some businesses become certified by one system, while others see advantages in dual certification. Let's take a closer look at each of the 3 certification systems. Forest Stewardship Council, or FSC, was established in 1993 by a diverse collection of environmentalists, First Nations people, concerned citizens, and industry leaders. Co-founders include the World Wildlife Federation and Greenpeace. An international non-governmental organization, the FSC promotes environmentally responsible, socially beneficial, and economically viable forest management. Its forest certification system is recognized worldwide and guarantees that an impartial third-party evaluation of the forest management practices has occurred. The FSC forest management standards are based on their international principles, which are compliance with laws and FSC principles, tenure and use rights and responsibilities, Indigenous peoples' rights, community relations and workers' rights, benefits from the forest, environmental impact, management plan, monitoring and assessment, maintenance of high conservation value forests, plantations. Further to the international principles and criteria, the FSC also creates and accredits regional standards that address specific environmental and social needs of a particular area. The regional standards in Canada are the Maritime Standard, the British Columbia Standard, the National Boreal Standard, and the Draft Great Lakes St. Lawrence Standard. The FSC also offers small and low-intensity managed forest certification, or SLIMF, which has the standard forest management requirements but different audit procedures. To qualify for this type of certification, a forest must fall within the SLIMF definition. A small forest is defined as being fewer than 1,000 hectares. A low-intensity forest has a harvesting rate of less than 20% of the mean annual growth in timber and an annual harvest or an annual average harvest of less than 5,000 cubic meters. Forests that are solely dedicated to harvesting non-timber products also qualify. In Ontario, the following FSC certification is available: SLIMF certification, Resource Manager certification, Group certification, Chain of Custody certification. In 1995, the Canadian Council of Forest Ministers, CCFM for short, produced a national framework of criteria and indicators to track Canada's progress in sustainable forest management. They enlisted the Canadian Standards Association, or CSA, to develop the standard based on the following 6 criteria: conservation of biological diversity, maintenance and enhancement of forest ecosystem condition and productivity, conservation of soil and water resources, forest ecosystem contributions to global ecological cycles, multiple benefits to society, accepting society's responsibility for sustainable development. The CSA gathered a multi-stakeholder committee that included consumers, environmentalists, government, industry, Aboriginal peoples, and academics. Together, the committee worked through a transparent, consensus-based process to craft Canada's national standard for sustainable forest management, which we will refer to as the Standard. Since its launch in 1996, the Standard has been maintained and updated in an open public process by the same committee that developed it. It was reviewed and revised in 2002 and again in 2009. The Standard outlines the requirements for sustainable forest management, including the nature of the commitment, the management framework, the review of actions, the monitoring of effectiveness, and continual improvement. Public participation is crucial to this certification system. The public is asked to set values, objectives, indicators, targets that reflect local needs, and they are given the opportunity to monitor effectiveness and change. Like the FSC, the CSA SFM offers certification to smaller operations. The CSA SFM standard for woodlots and other small area forests is available for forests up to 4,000 hectares in size. The standard uses the Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification, or PEFC, Chain of Custody Standard. This allows managers of certified forests to use the PEFC product label. The Sustainable Forest Initiative, or SFI, is an independent, non-profit organization that is governed by equal representation of environmental, social, and economic stakeholders. It promotes responsible forest management practices in North America and responsible fiber procurement throughout the world. Developed by the United States forestry industry in response to the international movement towards sustainable forestry, the SFI programs, principles, and implementation guidelines were in place by 1995. By 1998, it had evolved into a full-fledged national standard for American and Canadian forests. The Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification, or PEFC, endorsed the internationally recognized SFI standard in 2005, which is now widely used throughout the United States and Canada. The SFI standard is made up of principles, objectives, performance measures, and indicators which address economic, environmental, cultural, and legal issues, as well as ongoing improvement of sustainable forest management practices. The following 14 core principles make up the foundation of the SFI standard: sustainable forestry, forest productivity and health, protection of water resources, protection of biological diversity, aesthetics and recreation, protection of special sites, responsible fiber sourcing practices, North America, avoidance of controversial sources including illegal logging offshore, legal compliance, research, training and education, public involvement, transparency, continual improvement. The SFI standard is revised every 5 years to include the latest scientific data and address emerging issues. The current version of the standard is valid from 2010 to 2014. The SFI certification program is made up of 2 components: forest certification and Chain of Custody Certification. Program participants include private landowners, public landowners and managers, conservation groups, and universities. Since SFI is geared toward larger forest operations, it endorses the American Tree Farm System for non-industrial or private landowner certification. Chain of Custody, or COC certification, tracks forest products every step of the way, from the initial processing right down to the final product. Sometimes called Forest Product Certification, it is available to mills, printers, distributors, manufacturers who make wood products, and retailers who buy, use, or sell certified wood. In order to claim that a product supports sustainable forest management, every company that is involved in the production process must hold a valid COC certificate. Furthermore, every link in the COC chain, like the forest gate, sawmill, primary and secondary manufacturing, distribution, and printing, is audited to make sure that the approved tracking and handling processes are being used. Since businesses that seek certification vary in size, complexity, and organizational structure, all of the certification systems that are available in Ontario offer different types of certificates to match the unique needs of forest managers and companies. Some of the COC certificates available in Ontario include single certificates, which are for single organizations, multi-site certificates, which are for organizations with multiple sites who wish to seek certification under one certificate. With multi-site certificates, a central office is identified and responsible for making sure that the participating sites follow procedures. This type of certificate makes the development and maintenance of systems and processes more efficient. Finally, group certificates are for organizations with less than 15 employees who want to seek certification under one certificate. With this type of certificate, the group can share management and monitoring functions, which increases efficiency while decreasing costs. In part 2 of this video, we will explore the how of chain of custody certification by taking a closer look at the different elements of COC certification. This will give you a clear understanding of how it works and what to expect as your organization navigates the process.